Welcome back, everyone, to the Profitable Steward Podcast. We are grateful to have Josh Adams here from Living Soil Management. We gave a shout out to him in one of our recent episodes in his company. And we also are joined again by William DeMille. So my name is Jared Sorensen. I'm the host here. And as we get started, we want to talk specifically about the farming and some of the challenges that we're currently facing with commodity style, large volume, low margin farming practices, which is largely practiced throughout the United States, and it's becoming more of the practice throughout the world, unfortunately. So, William, if you'd like to kick off and just say what's got us to this point, broad strokes, what in history, when did it start that we switched from producing things which were nutrient dense to now we're getting paid to produce things at a high volume level?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I'm glad to be here today. Super happy to have Josh here to get his perspective. From the historical point of view, everybody needs to look up the name Norman Borlaug. He was the father of the Green Revolution. And green then meant something different than it means now. But the Green Revolution and what Norman Borlaug started was the industrial chemical revolution. So in the ads, everybody fed themselves. Everybody had their own milk cow, pretty much. Everybody had their own flock of laying hens. Community was very different than it is today, but people worked together. In the ads, we see a big shift. We have a huge crises in the United States, which started with the Great Depression. It ends with the ending of World War II. And there were all these emergency measures that were taken by the government to try to solve a lot of problems. One of those is the farm subsidy. That continues today. It should have been stopped once the emergency was over. But one of the big problems is we shifted from the land to the cities, and not that there's something inherently wrong with a city per se, but it changed the culture so that people don't have community where we can rely on one another. We are relying on jobs, and if we can't get a job, we're relying on a market that works for us, a government subsidy, a government handout. The farmers are some of the biggest takers of the welfare system, and farmers hate it when I say that. But if you look at the food stamp system that feeds people who are, underprivileged or whatever, underemployed, that is the same. The money comes from the same place. That is part of the
Mhm.
farm bill. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And let's
Okay.
get into solutions.
Yeah. Yeah. So no doubt we live in a challenging time. Talked to a banker recently, and he said that potato farmers are projecting a $3,000 per acre loss. Is that right, Josh? Is anybody in the commodity farming making money right now?
Not very many people are making any money, no, and the attitude when you get these farmers together is pretty somber. They're pretty bummed out. They don't really know what to do, and a lot of them are just trying to cut costs, cut costs, cut costs, and just buckle down and try to weather the storm because they've weathered storms in the past, and they figure this too will pass, and so they're just trying to hunker down and just see the least amount of damage caused to their operation as possible is basically the mindset right now. It's not an abundant mindset. It's absolutely a let's try not to die mindset right now. And if they have cattle, it's insulated a little bit, but the straight up commodity row crop farmers, yeah, there's a lot of anxiety out there right now for those guys.
Yeah. We want to focus in this podcast on hope and on solutions, right? All of us, I think, in agriculture understand the problem. Maybe some of those who are not directly involved in production agriculture, this is news to them. The livestock market is at an extreme high. The break evens on the farmers are very high, and the margin prices are low. And so they're operating at a loss and have been for what, the past couple years, Josh?
Yeah, probably 3 years now. Yeah,
Okay.
two and a half,
And
2.5, 3 years for most major commodities.
and this year no different, right? I mean, hay's probably up a little bit. Are hay farmers making money?
No, hay farmers are not making money. They're if they're breaking even, they're calling that a win. And that's just regionally based on freight and basis is the determining factor on if those guys are breaking even or losing money.
Okay. So in other businesses, there would have to be a shift if you were going into your third year of loss. First of all, how are these farmers sustaining this? What's keeping them alive and keeping their families fed and their employees employed?
Well, unfortunately, the equity from previous generations. And so it's just a situation in which the equity that was built before things got really out of hand on the commodity side, that equity is being refinanced away right now. And it just happens out of necessity. I empathize with that. I had that situation at one point in my career. I know that sometimes you have to just refinance and go. And that's what a lot of these guys are dealing with. I talked to a potato grower. It's probably been 6-8 months ago now. It's been a while, but he says, I just can't refinance this farm a whole lot more times. And
Yeah.
this has been in my family for 108 years, he said. He says, I just can't keep doing this. And so, I mean, he's kind of at the end of his rope. He's feeling frustrated, and he's looking for solutions. But what's interesting is there is a lot of groundswell for some major solutions that are upcoming.
Let's
And
talk
so
about that.
I think we
What
should. I think we
Yeah.
should. Where do you want me to
Let me
start?
let me interject here real quick. This is one of the most positive things because when you look at it from a historical perspective, this is the time when if ranchers can become entrepreneurs instead of selling into that commodity uh, system, ranchers, farmers, everybody in ag. This is where in the next 20 years, you're the leaders for a long time into the future. But
Absolutely.
and one of the real problems right now is we, as a population, we don't see that historical perspective. We think we're going to get through this crisis the same as Dad got through it and Grandpa got through it, and maybe we've got through it 3 or 4 times, but this crisis is different now. So we need to really be focusing more, sell direct to somebody who eats the food,
Well, and to the credit of this podcast and other podcasts like it and other media outlets, there's a lot of information that's coming out into the world, because there's so much information that has been given to us by these same consolidated companies that is inaccurate, completely inaccurate. So I was with this group from Canada just last week, and they said, yeah, our whole lives we were told that Roundup or glyphosate was just phos water and we could drink it. Didn't hurt us, and that was a common thing. They just didn't know. And we've through a lot of evidence and a lot of studies and a lot of scientific understanding now, and then we've understood that that's completely false. That we have some inputs being put out on this farm ground that are labeled antimicrobials. We're microbiological beings. Farm ground is microbiologically dictated on how it operates. And so if we're blasting the life source that gives us life, that's probably not a good idea, right? That's probably not a solid plan for the future. You know what I mean? And so just having these synthetic answers to these biological questions, that's hitting a dead end. And so what's interesting, William, is the consumer is waking up. The consumer's kind of rising up out of their slumber. They're listening to good information, and this good information is resonating with them. And in my opinion, it's because we're biological beings. We're connected to the earth. Everybody in the cities, when they go walking through a park or when they go walking into the mountains, it revives them. It rejuvenates them. It does that because they're in their home again. They're in their biological base. And so what we need to understand is if we smoke the living organisms in our biological base or our home, then we're not doing ourselves any favors. The reason that we feel so drawn and connected to nature and all these people that live in cities and apartment buildings love to go hiking is because that's where they feel grounded again. That's what gives them rejuvenation, right? What's interesting is if we can produce food that respects that biological diversity, that biological thriving, then that food will give us the same thing. But when we eat stuff out of a package that doesn't expire for 150 years, then we're not going to get any biological benefits. It's not going to rejuvenate us. Right. And so and people know that. People are waking up. They're like, yeah, I don't feel good when I eat. It keeps me alive, but man, that's about it. It kind of makes me sick. I feel depressed after I eat. I get bloated after I eat. My body reacts poorly. And so because of this awakening from the consumer, people are starting to look into why that is. And there's a lot of information coming out why. And so there's a big groundswell for marketing opportunities for farmers that recognize that and ranchers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And we talked about that on the last podcast, how the CAGR is the growth rate is 11% per year in the grass-fed beef market. So my question for you, Josh, today is, do you have any numbers? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but on this consumer growing things that farmers would have for sale, potatoes, wheat, corn, whatever.
So Living Soil Management is a management company that goes out on the farm ground physically and treats the ground. We're hands-on, we're boots on the ground. This is a tough thing. I wanted to start a simpler business than this, but it doesn't work. The only way we can authentically mimic and mirror God's processes and principles is to speed up ecological time using systems and technology. And so that's how come it's not called Living Soil Products. We can't just sell jugs to people and fix everything. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's no one size fits all solution, but there is a management solution as stewards for every situation, for every single situation. And so, what Living Soil Management's goal and mission right now, I don't talk to very many farmers. You know who I'm talking to? I'm talking to CPG brands. I'm talking to these little brands that are saying, "Hey, we hear this huge demand coming from the marketplace, people that are just sick of it. And so we're creating brands that are synthetic chemical free, and they're trying to source all these natural ingredients as properly as they can. And to be honest with you, they have a pretty hard time. And so they dip into the organic market, and the organic market has its own problems. And so they're trying to figure out how to cobble together enough ingredients that aren't standardized on the commodity cycle in the commodity market, because that's a simple thing. They have that figured out, but they don't have a standardized way to get regenerative, nutrient dense feed, food, and fiber from the marketplace, because it's very disaggregated, and farmers are very independent creatures and aren't willing to combine on very many things. So this is the problem. And so what Living Soil Management is trying to do is be the solution.
Yeah. So Josh, how much of what farmers grow is actually food versus feed?
I don't have
Or
numbers. I don't have numbers for that, but it's vastly weighted towards the feed.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
vastly weighted that direction.
And so
Almost no food.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's worth addressing for a minute, that if there's going to be a fundamental shift, it needs to work in harmony with the livestock industry, because that feed goes to primarily cattle and chickens and pigs, right?
Right. Yep.
And that's not necessarily the best for them either. And it's
No.
not sustainable if the livestock side is not paying the farmer what it costs to be able to produce it. There will necessarily be a shift towards a different system, which we believe is a grass-based system, which is the way it should have stayed in to begin with. So what if, as we make that shift, and just kind of looking at a higher level, as we make that shift towards a pasture-based system and we are growing more food versus feed, does that mean we're going to be farming less acres? What are the implications for that, Josh?
So it depends on all depends on intensity of management, what the need is.
Okay.
So before you can properly prescribe, you have to properly diagnose. And so we have to understand what the goals of society is first. I think it would be inappropriate for me to say this is what we should do. But let's make some assumptions for the sake of this podcast. And let's just say, okay, let's say people want, a more nutrient dense food supply all the way around. And you're saying that it might be beneficial to have a grass-based system. Well, fair enough. I believe that there's room for expanded grass-based systems for sure. But I also believe that intensive managed annual systems intermixed with perennials is a very sustainable way to go also, because you get pops in production, you get an ecological boost with fast growing plants, a lot of management. I believe that the only difference between like a grass-based system and a yearling system grazing annuals is just ecological time. And you get that ecological time speed up completely commensurate with the intensity of the management. And so like we can all just lay back and seed perennial grass and say, Jesus, take the wheel, and graze as good as we can. And that's actually probably going to get us pretty far. But if we want to keep up with the kind of production that we have, if we're not glutting the market with garbage, if we actually have a demand for a lot of production, then intensively managing our properties and walking lockstep with nature at the same time is 100% possible, proven over many, many years. And so
Okay.
I think that it's not an all or none thing. I think it's a very specific mixture of both
Gotcha.
grass and intensive farming.
Tell us what that looks like, right? Because we all hear the horror stories of somebody who said, yeah, I'm going to go down that organic or this regenerative route. and their yields drop and their banker is calling them and their family life is stressed. So how do we mitigate that so that they don't go through that yield curve loss?
The monster in natural farming everywhere in the world that I've ever been so far, and I've been traveling a lot, is weeds. That's literally so this is very simple, guys. So I believe that God set this system up to be simple, and I believe that as stewards that we need to think in a very simple way as well and let God take care of the complicated things. So weeds being the biggest monster in this whole program, I just simply identify what the weeds are trying to do. We can't plant multi-species into an annual system and then spray the weeds out. That's dumb. That doesn't work. That's foolish. But as I heard William speak in one of his talks, if you have more roots touch under the soil profile, then there's incredible benefits to that plant, the hormone production of that plant, and that plant's ability to have an immune system. At Living Soil Management, we simply say, hey, let's honor all of Mother Nature's rules, every single one. Let's never break those rules. Let's never kill the soil biology, and let's never invite anything into our system of living soil management that's going to degrade the perpetuation of that health. And so it's challenging, but it's very simple. Like, it's hard, but it's simple. You know what I'm saying? It's not complicated. So
Okay.
all we need to do is honor those systems and continue on. So when we plant anything, we always plant more than one seed, Jared and William.
Mhm.
There's always more than one seed. Now, people say, hey, there's no monocrops in nature. There's no way, you got to plant a 17, 18 species mix. Nope, you don't. I'll prove it. If you get in an airplane and you fly over the northern territories of Canada and you're looking down, and what do you see? You see spruce trees. You see vast carpets of spruce forests. It looks like a monoculture. It's not. If you go down and climb down out of the airplane and you walk through those trees, I guarantee you're going to see grasses, forbs, legumes. You're going to see other species of plants. But in that location, Mother Nature is managing for the dominant species. So as stewards, we can manage for the dominant species ourselves. What is that? That's the species that pays us the best or accomplishes our goal. So that's all we got. That's all we need to do, gentlemen, is we need to identify what our dominant species needs to be, who values that, and then we need to manage for it. But we need to add additional species diversity into our annual cropping, whatever it is, species or perennial cropping, I don't care, and make sure that there's at least more than one seed there. And then we never kill anything. We simply feed what we want to thrive.
Yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true for sure. I teach mostly gardening, just the most, the mass of what I do, and help farmers, market gardeners, just home gardeners. And I've got a lot of positive feedback over the last many years saying that when people do it the way you just explained, because I always tell them that weeds are your friends, just don't let the weed go to seed. Manage your weeds so they stay small. Don't pull them out, maybe prune them back so that they're still growing. But then as your tomato plant grows, it becomes the dominant species. So you're not going to shade it with the weeds, and it will grow and it will thrive and it will do better than those tomatoes that are completely weed free. So it's awesome to hear you saying this from a larger agricultural perspective. The
100%.
science is
100%.
solid for sure.
Science is solid and it works every single time, not because we're smart and everybody else is stupid. It's because this is how the system of nature is set up. Identify the rules and follow them. What's interesting, William, is we can follow the system of Mother Nature so precisely, and we have such cool technology now that we can discourage the weeds from showing up. I mean, the weed seeds and the weed potential is always going to be there. But I think about it like this. If you go to a really healthy community and you drive into the healthy community, there's not going to be any fires burning. There's not going to be any crime. There's not going to be dead people in the streets, right? But there's going to be a fire station there that's well kept. There's going to be a police station there with a lot of guys in there with not much to do. And so how I see a very well propagated commercial agriculture operation, I see a very, very healthy, thriving ecosystem of crops that you desire, and then Mother Nature's paramedics on standby. Mother Nature's bugs and weeds on standby. They don't need to show up unless there's a problem, unless there's an imbalance. And maybe we say, okay, this weed grows because of an excess of salts or metals. Fair enough. So what does that mean? That means we need to figure out how to manage salts and metals out of our ecological profile. Fair enough. We can do that. We can easily do that with targeted microbiology, certain minerals, certain practices, certain companion crops. We can easily do that. And it's not any kind of chemical burn down or these offensive terms people use. It's just literally discouraging the weeds from thriving. So we have case after case. If on my website, I have some videos of me walking through a grain field, and this 135 acre grain field, something like that. And it was a carpet of weeds. You would have thought he was trying to grow those weeds, right? You couldn't even see the grain in amongst. And he says, well, we got to do something here. And this was the first time Living Soil Management had ever managed that ground. And he says, if you can get rid of these weeds, you're a miracle worker, because it was an organic grain field. And I says, we're not going to kill anything. I identified that the weeds were there. They're primarily salt and sodium sucking weeds. If you want to know what those are, go look on the side of the road, because what grows on the side of the road with the road salt, those are prime examples of what species love salt. Okay, and so we identified that those were the salt-loving weeds, and we simply put a heavy mineral application that's beneficial to microbiology, beneficial to the beneficial plant, that ties up salts and metals. That's all we did. And we applied that very heavily on that ground. The salts and metals were tied up electrically by the natural minerals, and I went out 60 days later, and I would pick the weeds, and they were the exact same size as when we treated that crop. They shut down. That's just they don't work unless they're asked to work. And so we said, hey, we just took your job away. Well, the weed's going to say, okay, we're cool. We're going to hang out. I don't care if there's seeds in there. There's probably more seeds in there. Doesn't bother me, because if we do such a good job of managing the mineral, macro, and micronutrient profile of that ground, and manage the toxins and salts, the weeds go away. Always have, always will. But it takes intensity. You can't just sit back and do nothing and expect that to occur.
That's awesome. That's so good. Josh, could you pick a crop, whatever crop you want, and let's just do a hypothetical run through. Let's say that I have 1,000 acres and I'm growing a conventional crop, whatever. How would I maybe start an entrepreneurial venture where I can sell food instead of a commodity crop? How would I switch that over?
You want to sell one thing or multiple things?
Either way, doesn't
I
matter.
think it'd be a good idea to sell multiple things. It's always good to have more than one product line, because if somebody quits buying one product, then you're out of business, right?
Nice. I'm open to that. Let's go.
Okay, so what we would do is we'd identify the market need for the area. I'd say, okay, here I can sell yearling steers at a big price, or better yet, I can sell meat. I can sell cuts. I can sell cuts of yearlings. So what I would do is I would say, all right, let's plant some perennial forage. So I'd plant alfalfa, but I'd plant with it teff grass, and I'd plant a little bit of hairy vetch, and I'd plant that all at once. Okay, I get that going. We're talking from bare ground, right, William?
Yeah, I've been growing corn and soybeans.
Yeah, so we're gonna go and we're gonna plant 20% of our acres. We're gonna plant in alfalfa, and then we're gonna plant 20% into a forage mix. And that's going to be a very diverse, when I say very, I'm not a 17 seed guy. I'm like a 4 or 5 seed guy. We're going to plant radishes. We're going to plant oats. We're going to plant barley. We're going to plant triticale. We're going to plant vetch and maybe some clover. Maybe we'll pull the triticale out and put peas there. That's what we'll do. And this is irrigated ground or non-irrigated ground. I guess it doesn't matter. And then we're going to grow an incredible amount of annual forage. We're going to start this perennial forage going. Okay. And then we're going to come around the line, and maybe we can, so I'm thinking pivots, just this is how my mind works. And so maybe we go around and we have an area in which we could produce. I'm trying to figure out what parts of the world we could go to. Honestly, we could just split pie piece up some various greens, vegetables, pick your vegetable. It doesn't really matter. And pie piece those on one pivot and just have that be all by itself, or one quarter that you have if you're dry farm in Illinois, and just dedicate that to vegetable production, right? And let's see, we're just out of corn and soybeans, and so we have a very high antibiotic load on our ground, and the carrier to those antibiotics are heavy metals and salts, and so we're going to have to clean that up. And so what we're going to do we have cattle yet? Maybe we'll buy some cattle. So we buy some cattle, or lease somebody else's cattle, or have somebody custom graze for us. And on our really bad ground that has high salts and metals, we're going to plant like a forage sugar beet, because forage sugar beets love to sequester salts, right? And we're going to plant that on our worst ground. We're gonna plant that on our worst ground, and so the roots are going to get busy sequestering all the metals and garbage, and there's going to be some weeds out there, and we're going to deal with it. We're going to leave them alone, and then we're going to come around. We still have one more plate to go. That's when we're going to go to. I mean, we could do sweet corn, we could do beans, we could do any number of things on the last. But anyway, what we'll do is we'll plant these crops. For simplicity of management, we'll say that's all that there is, and we're gonna on our cash crops and on our crops that weeds will be a bad deal, like the perennials, we're going to overwhelm them with minerals and biology, one way or the other. We're going to overwhelm them with minerals and biology. That's going to clean up the toxins. That's going to clean up the heavy metals. That's going to discourage weed growth. That's going to open pore spaces up in the soil profile, and that's going to get things clicking. Now, think about this, guys. Your body starts to clean your lungs one day after you start smoking or stop smoking. One day. Mother Nature is not designed to take 75 years to do anything, right? With the right inputs and the right energy, she changes really, really fast. I would submit to you guys that the only reason we have a corn and soybean industry is because of the immune system that already can exist in the soil profile, not because of the chemicals. It's despite the chemicals that we get a crop, not because of them. Now, and so when we eliminate the synthetics, that's the hugest management. That's the first largest management concern that we have to make. Like getting rid of the cigarettes. Number one, right? To be a non-smoker, we got to get rid of the cigarettes. Boom. Get rid of all the synthetic poison. And then guys feel like, oh, all my tools are gone, and they're terrified. Nope, all your tools aren't gone. We simply have to be smart about how we plant multiple species, and then use, if it pays, then we put a bunch of minerals and biology on top of it. If it doesn't pay and it doesn't matter, just let it roll and then graze it with cattle or chop it with a chopper. It doesn't matter. Okay, there's all sorts of management concerns that we can get around this weed thing, but people are so like addicted to saying we got to kill the weeds that they can't even think past that. And so then what we have is we have a diverse mixture of all these plants that have a potential high market value. And then if we're smart, then we roll our cattle through our annuals first while our perennials are getting established. And then we pick our vegetables, and then we roll our cattle through the residue of the vegetables. And then we just literally winter our animals on the sugar beets. And that's what we do. We just roll them through, and we have all sorts of production off the top end of that, right? And then pretty soon we're killing these cattle. We buy them in stages, and we're killing these cattle. We're selling cuts because we have not put synthetics on for an entire year. Our immune system of our soil has woken up. The heavy metals, hopefully because of mineral applications or other cover crops. If you want to speed up ecological time, you got to add stuff quick. And so that's why I'm in business. That's why we put minerals and biology on so fast. We do that, and the crops that you eat off of that field year, I promise, will be cleaner than multiple year organic fields. We have a lot of data that proves that. So if you have a living soil management system with a lot of intensity, that it grows crops right next to an organic field that uses organic products out of a jug, right? The living soil management crops will be, in some cases, we have data 80% more nutrient dense than we had a wheat field last year that had 93%, that was organic, had 93% higher heavy metals than the living soil management field. Wow. It had been organic a long time. Ours was treated the one time or the 1 year, right? 93% higher heavy metals in the organic grain. So imagine what the conventional grain is. And so you put this intensity on, things clean up really fast, and then you can begin to market as regenerative. You can't do organic for 3 years because it's an antiquated system. It needs to change, quite honestly. But you can sell regenerative after the first year of being completely cigarette free, right? We'll call it cigarette free.
Yep.
And then we can have some nutrient density beyond that. And then you got to get your marketing pants on and then market the heck out of it. Then you're going to be able to cut a crop of forage. Then you can save the forage off the perennials that you had planted. You save that for the winter. You don't graze on that ground, the perennial ground. You leave it alone, let it sit and rest. Just hammer the annuals. But and then you'll either till the ground with the cattle, or you'll till it with conventional tillage. I'd prefer the animal. And then, but when you do that, follow it with a grain drill. Tillage is a great tool, reduced tillage is wonderful principle, but sometimes sometimes tillage is wonderful, but you got to do it with your eyes open. Sometimes tillage, it jump starts that soil profile, gets air in the soil profile. It kills a few some microbiology. That's true, but microbiology grows and populates so fast that if you do it with your eyes open, you just got to make sure that you can get it repopulated, re-inoculated quickly. So when guys need to till, I say, fair enough, till, follow it with a grain drill right behind. Okay. And so if you get a system started like that, you're actually kind of a madman. Like you're a crazy person and you're not going to sleep a lot, but it's absolutely possible. If you want to stair step into that, you absolutely can too. But what I would say is no matter where you're at, Mother Nature does not understand synthetic toxin. She does not understand synthetic poison by design. And so we are biological beings. We don't understand that crap either. And I promise, guys, it sounds like fairy tale stuff, but we do not need synthetic poison to be able to make crops. We need targeted management. We need intensity. We need biology, minerals, and energy to make big crops. We do that, and it changes immediately. And so that's what I would do on 1,000 acres, William. And I'd sell cuts, I'd sell vegetables, I'd sell sweet corn, I'd sell grain, whatever I wanted, whatever the market demanded.
Right. Okay. So that was awesome. That's a good hypothetical. I'm gonna stay in the hypothetical for a second here and play that role.
Yeah, do it.
All right, Josh, I'm excited. I'm going to switch from my monocrops of corn and soybeans and all my inputs. I'm going to go cold turkey this year. I've got 3 pivots, and they're big ones, and I'm going to pie shape these up and do what you said. The one thing you said is going to shut me down and the whole thing ends. And that is, you said, put my marketing pants on. Help me with that one.
Yeah, so Living Soil Management's working on that right now. So guys generally don't like to be marketers. They know 3 people that buy whatever they grow, and they just call one of the 3 people, and their stuff goes away, and they get a check. It's easy, right?
Yep.
And so right now there's a consolidation of these buyers. There's not very many buyers of commodities in the world anymore. And so there used to be like 56 meat companies. Now there's 5. You know what I'm saying? And so this is where the revolution is. It's not in if this kind of farming is possible. So you see this line right here in my background?
Yep.
That's where Living Soil Management stopped treating these potatoes right here. That's where the weeds started to grow.
Okay, so for people listening, the picture right behind you, a beautiful green field of potatoes, and then where you were putting your finger, it looks yellow behind that.
No, it's not yellow. It's beautiful green, man.
No, but behind it, where you said yours stopped, so the potatoes behind you are beautiful green, but beyond that, where it stopped, it's a different color.
Yeah, beyond that where it stopped, so you see those tall plants right there. Those tall plants are kochia weed, red root, all these plants that suck salts and metals, right? So we eliminated the need for those plants over here. And so the job for those salt weeds are still, I didn't spray any herbicide here. I put minerals, I put biology, I put natural nutrients, I put probiotics.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. That's good. So you're cutting that green field in half.
Yeah.
Okay. So on one side, there's a bunch of tall weeds in it, and on the other side, there isn't. Okay, right. Got it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so this had 1152, 1034 fertilizer. This had absolutely nothing but probiotics, prebiotics, minerals, and microbiology in targeted ratios that we know how to do. We test and we figured out, we know how to put it on. And so look how dirty regenerative agriculture can be. Oh, by the way, did I tell you that this field right here yielded 47.5% more than this field right here did? Did I say that yet?
No.
Did I tell you that this field right here, these potatoes, I picked them out of the ground and they're the best potatoes I've eaten in my whole life? And did I also tell you that I sent samples into the laboratory and they came back between the lowest beneficial nutrient in these potatoes were 20% more than these? That was the lowest. Increase. The highest increase was 400% beneficial, 400% more. There was 80% more phos. There was more iron. There was more beneficial organic acids. Like, this was nutrient packed. I ate like 3 of these potatoes for supper once, and I was full. I didn't want anything else. I wasn't snacky after. I didn't have an insulin hit. They were delicious.
Okay,
and
so
I can't find these.
just for clarification, how long have you been working on that field? Did it take you 5 years, 10 years, or
Oh yeah,
this is your 1-year deal?
the long lonely road. You know, we started in May and we dug them in September.
So biology,
I'd never treated this ground ever before.
so in one growing season, you're getting those results by getting the right biology in the soil.
Biology paired with minerals and understanding that this ground needs detoxification. So the
Right.
ratio of minerals changes based on that. It isn't just a throw a jug out there and watch magic happen. It's management. I can't emphasize that strongly enough. But in one growing season with intensity and management, yeah, absolutely, no problem. This is what happens. And guess what, William? It happens every single time, not because I'm a genius. I'm a very average intelligence guy. I simply identify Mother Nature's language and never break her rules. That's it. That's as hard as it is.
That's awesome. This is perfect. I'm so glad to hear this. This is like in the spiritual community I'm a part of, we call things like this second witnesses, where something is happening and you know that it's true and you're working on it, but sometimes we question it and we think, well, am I the only one experiencing this? And then we get somebody like Josh Adams on here and he's preaching the very same thing. It's like, yeah, there is my second witness that this is actually true.
Yeah.
So thank you. This is good.
Well, sometimes it's valuable to if you're getting a spiritual witness to, like, if you're having a hard time with alcohol, to hear from a past alcoholic, right? Like, oh, that guy's been there, you know? Well, I started out conventionally farming when I was 25. I farmed most of my life working for other people, but bought a farm when I was 25 and just started and did what my neighbors are doing. Guys, I did everything wrong you could think of. I was spraying chemicals. I was tilling too much. I didn't know. I was just doing what everybody else was doing, and I was doing a bad job of it. And the only reason that you see here is possible, because this was just last year. The only reason this is possible is because I didn't have any oversight. I bought a farm, could do whatever I wanted with it, 800 acres, and it grew to 2,600 acres over time, but was by trying and failing and being embarrassed. You know, I know there's a lot of guys that are like, I can't have weeds in my field. The neighbors will see it. I'll be too embarrassed. And that actually keeps people from doing this kind of management or starting it. I screwed up so many times and had so many mistakes. I just have this weird brain worm that doesn't let me quit once I've started. And so after enough iterations, William, we figured out a way that this is a system that is infinitely scalable, because I thought, well, if we can't do it everywhere, then let's not do it at all. Because I had a goal if this is a righteous cause, if this is a good thing to do, it needs to go on every acre all the time. And there's some practices, as you guys well know out there, that it's just not scalable. You know, putting big tanks of microbiology and bubbling it by every pivot for 2 days and then moving it to the next pivot for 2 days. Like, that's not infinitely scalable. That's cumbersome and slow. And that might work for a small guy. And if he's doing that, great, good on him. But for a system that needs to be rapid, where we have a growing season and we need a lot of energy quickly, the system that we've figured out is absolutely doable on every acre on planet Earth. And this isn't a Josh thing. I feel, you're talking spiritual stuff, I feel like the Lord taught me all this stuff, man. I really, really do. Because Mother Nature, she needs stewards. She doesn't need people fighting against her all the time.
Yeah, well, that is the whole point of stewardship. It is spiritual. And if we're not going to take a spiritual step into this, we are really going to struggle. And I'm going back to the historical model. This goes back thousands of years. If you look at the Georgic tradition, Georgic is the ancient word for farming, and it starts 700 years BC with Hesiod. And he said that if people are on the land and they are partnering with the earth and with the gods, and back in those days, they had a pantheon of gods, the Greeks, and that's what they believed. And these are the people who built the civilizations. 700 years later, you have Virgil who comes along. He writes the Georgic poems. You can go look those up and read them. And he says the same thing. We get the same thing with the Anglo-Saxons. We have the same thing in the Orient, the Eastern cultures. We see the same thing in the American founding. So the great civilizations were built with stewardship, which meant spirituality. And when you had people who went somewhat industrial, those are the people who became reliant on the systems of the cities. And then usually a slave class was raised up, and then the civilization falls. And so it's this repeating cycle that goes over and over and over hundreds of times. And we're at that crisis right now. When we recorded our last podcast, Jared, that we hadn't been in a war with Iran. Now we are. So
Yeah.
these things keep unfolding, you know, and the need for good food has always been there, but it's more now than ever.
One of my favorite quotes is from 384 BC. You talk about the Greeks. Hippocrates, they call him the father of medicine. He says, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food." And so, to me, that attests to the byproduct of this kind of management. There's so many downstream implications of simply being a fine steward of the land. People say, "Oh, the simple farmer." BS. The simple farmer. No, the simple, very, very wise steward. Fair enough. That's better. Because there's so many downstream implications, a healthy community. I had a doctor one time. I don't know if I should share this. Anyway, I won't share the details, but they said that I was the only male in my area without prostate cancer. And they said, "You farm?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Everybody has prostate cancer markers at your age." Says, "What do you do?" And they looked at me like this, and I says, and that kind of hit me. I said, "Whoa." I says, "Well, I haven't sprayed a chemical in 15 years. And they go, "That's it." And I said, "Holy crap, this is a big deal." This is before I started living soil management.
Josh, thank you for sharing that. I understand that can be a sensitive thing, but that is exactly the point of why we do what we do. I mean, I grew up, I raised my kids. They grew up in northwestern Missouri. Everybody's spraying Roundup everywhere. The water we drank, I'm sure, was saturated with all kinds of chemicals. You know, there were 2,4-D, Roundup, the list goes on and on. We didn't know back then. And now every one of my kids has issues that we can go back to that, that thing, the chemical signature. And, I mean, I have one son that has Tourette's. I have another son with, everybody, they have their issues. So the details don't matter. But the point is, even if we have those problems, by a really clean, healthy diet, we can use the idea of epigenetics to clean that up and to fix some of these problems. And that's a big passion of mine, is helping to clean up some of the mistakes that we have been a part of in the past.
Yeah, and we're equipped for it. We have good scrubbers in our bodies. We have really good detoxification equipment if it doesn't get overwhelmed. But there's an incredible amount of detoxification assistance to us. I mean, I'm sipping on this. This is aronia berry juice, right? Who drinks that? I do, because it detoxifies constantly. It's got 32 times more antioxidants than blueberries, right? And so we can live in the world, and the world is polluted, fair enough, but we can take an active role in our own human health to detoxify as beneficial as we see fit. And so, I mean, that's my plan. That's my game. Don't intentionally poison ourselves and then detoxify the majority of the time. And so I really appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, it's a really big deal. That's the reason why they invited me up to Canada, did I tell you? Is because this one gentleman's sharp guy, Wilson Farms in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. And he says, "Hey, we're on a cool path." He's brewing microbes. He's doing cool things, but there's still so much herbicide dependence up there. And he says, "Hey, I lost 9 cattle. And they traced it back to the glyphosate. Because this is a labeled antimicrobial, and the rumen of a cow operates on microbes. The rumen of your stomach, your immune system operates with microbiology. And so why would we? And they said there was a farmer there. Gosh, he was a great guy. And he said, "Well, can I just do both? Can I put some microbiology and still kind of hang on, because it's so scary to let go of your tools?" And I says, "Okay, fair enough. That'd be like taking an antibiotic and a probiotic in the same swallow. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And so, and there was also a vet that showed up to the meeting up in Canada, and he just, like an ancillary conversation, he says, "Yeah, I have dairies all over the place that are just losing production and losing cattle, and everybody's coming up sick." And the vet is tracing it to the glyphosate killing all the microbiology in the rumen of those cattle. And he's like, I'd sure like to see guys do away with it. And I heard RFK the other day say, hey, 80% of our farming to dry up without it. Well, 80% of our dead soil management would go away.
If that was the only change, if you just remove the toxin without putting the biology in. But that's the beauty of the system that you've perfected. So Josh, you've alluded to some of the principles of nature. Can you alliterate what those are? When you go out and you treat land, what are those underlying principles that you are in alignment with?
I believe that Mother Nature's always chasing health. I can prove it. If you have a piece of plowed up farm ground and it's just dirt sitting on the top of the ground and you let it be, what would happen? Well, it'd get infested with weeds, right? Yep. Get infested with weeds, and if you kept on leaving it alone, it'd stay infested with weeds for a minute. After, I don't know, depending on where you lived, maybe a year, maybe a half a year, maybe 2 years, pretty soon you'd start seeing some grasses creep in, and pretty soon that bare ground would be overcome with grasses or some sort of beneficial forage of one kind or another. Why is that? It's because Mother Nature says, okay, the soil is covered, it's healthy enough now, let's call in the herbivores to cycle these nutrients. And so, because nutrient cycling is Mother Nature chasing health. That's how come June grass is really good feed in June, but really terrible feed in August. Because Mother Nature says, hey, I need herbivores here now because we can handle it. But pretty soon it's going to be too dry. I need herbivores gone, because then you're going to start doing me damage. Everything is on purpose, guys. Nothing is accidental. And so if we understand that everything that Mother Nature is trying to do is chasing health, that gives you a framework of what you're looking at. And so I say, okay, fair enough. Is there a lack of diversity? Is there, I'm going to make it even more simple than that. The steps that I go through will be, okay, is there good geology here? Is there good biology here? Can air get into the soil profile? What's the moisture situation? And what's the goal of the steward? That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. If we have good geology, good biology, air, I can't specify enough. Air's huge. 99.2% of the non-water part of the above ground part of the plant is consisting of elements of the air. Okay, so air's a big deal. So if air can't get down into your soil profile, that's a little bit of a problem. And just go from there and just understand, okay, whatever I'm seeing out here is Mother Nature trying to chase health. And then I ask the steward what he's doing. And it's very, very hard, but it's incredibly simple, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This is not complicated. Dead soil management's complicated. We need to know the composition of molecules that are 26 letters long, We need to understand how they play well with other molecules that are 26 letters long, right? It's complicated, but people, man, and they love their smartphones and they love their gadgets and they love complicated. And if you let them, they'll just nerd out and get complicated, and it's so fun for them. Well, I'd say let those guys be engineers and let stewards of the land stay hooked into God, because he's the one that designed this system, and we need to perpetuate what he's already perfected.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what your vision is for farming going forward, Josh.
So there's a shakeup. Everybody feels it, right? You agree?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think everybody that we talk to says, yeah, there's something, and even if they don't consciously say that, I think in their hearts they know, like, hey, something's shifting here.
Yeah, something's coming. The consumer is being very educated. A lot of information in the world, right? I don't believe, even though it would be nice, I don't believe that Thomas Jefferson's vision of America, that everybody was an agrarian, is going to happen, at least for a long time. I think that macro agriculture is here for at least a good while. I don't know, maybe 100 years. Okay, so if that's true, I believe that there's groups of farmers in geographical areas that need to summon courage. That's actually a big deal. And use that courage to, instead of fighting with their neighbor over water, instead of fighting with their neighbor over the fence line or whatever silly dispute there is, to realize that there's an incredible amount of power if a few guys will combine together. And then they need to hire a marketing guru, build a brand, hook onto somebody else that has built a brand, and never, ever, ever break the rules of Mother Nature. If they will have the courage to do that, then they will find abundance like no other. So the reason that I know that that's true is I realized this is a startup business. I started this business full-time in 2022. 2022, 2023, right in there. It was a little disheartening because I'd go to farmers and I'd say, hey, let me treat some of your ground. And I'd come with an ask that please let me treat your ground. It'll be good for you, please. And a lot of guys did, and that was good. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, man, I want to come to these guys with an offer. I want to come to these guys and say that they're just beside themselves, that understand. They're like, hey, my soil's getting bad. I'm killing my cattle on accident. I can't raise anything. I spray
My
my
health is
side of
bad.
yeah, well, the weeds don't die anymore. I'm frustrated. They're just done. I want to come to those guys and say, hey, get rid of all your synthetics. I'll help you manage the production and what you guys call weed control. I don't use that word. I don't use control in any of my vernacular, but we just feed what we want. We manage for what we want than what we don't want. And then we have immediately a crop and a production block that we can go sell to a CPG brand. Synthetic chemical free, nutrient dense, heavy metal, low levels of sodium and salt. And I want to go and sell it to a young lady in Illinois that's making crackers for children, right? Or I want
Yeah.
to sell it to the Moose Tracks granola bars, oats. I want to sell chemical free oats to them. Or I want to sell, you know what I mean? And then Josh,
Yes.
I'm not scared to talk to people. I'll go do it for you. I don't care. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to say, hey, I want to treat your whole farm. And that's scary, but we can supply this group right here and I'll help with your marketing. That's a safe thing that is comfortable. I mean, that's not what I feel like my calling in life is, but that's what it needs to happen. There needs to be marketing people that connect with CPG brands and some of these upcoming synthetic chemical, regenerative brands and get directly from the farmer this kind of production. And LSM, you push the LSM button and we make that production happen. If it grows in soil, you push us, we make it happen. Hell or high water.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with you there. I think the one thing that farmers understand is profitability, right? If it makes them more profitable, like, yeah, maybe I don't understand it, but I can do that. And I think especially now when they've gone through 2 years, 3 years of unprofitability, that's going to speak to them. So Josh, how do we push this to the tipping point where we see more acres biologically managed versus chemically managed? No, I think it ties back to that, to the marketing and building that market. But what else do we need to do?
So this is incredibly simple but hard, just like everything in life is. So we need to let all the CPG brands know, even the major brands. We need to let General Mills, Ardent Mills. We need to let all the small mills out there in the country, the potato packers. We need, the people that have slaughterhouses that just are selling, selling as local as they can, but hit a ceiling and have a hard time. There's people making a heck of a business selling online beef products, for heaven's sake. So what do we need to do? We need to say, hey, there's systems and processes where weeds aren't an issue anymore, that you can grow regenerative crops on massive acres right away. God has inspired it. It's natural, it's fast, and it can happen at the snap of your fingers, and you can have a regenerative farm, and the profitability behind it's bananas. So this production right here behind me cost $120 or $115 less than this ground right here per acre. 115 less. Didn't cost more. So sometimes it does cost more. If your ground is completely devoid of nutrients, you've been mining the macro and micronutrients for years and years, you have nothing but synthetic residue on your ground, it's going to cost a little bit more for a minute, and then it's going to get cheaper, right? But what we need is buyers or a demand for organic or regenerative wheat, with regenerative barley, regenerative rye, regenerative flax, regenerative beef, regenerative potatoes. Potatoes are giant, regenerative vegetables of any kind, right? Find that demand. I know the demand is there. We need CPG brands to be either start or contact you guys or Living Soil Management, and we will go out. Like, that's what I do anyway. I'm already at the farms anyway. I'll go out to the farms and I'll say, hey, I'm not coming at you with an ask. Hey, please let me fertilize your crops like everybody else does. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, here's a contract. If we can grow your whole farm with Living Soil Management instead of dead soil management, we're going to 3x your gross margin. You want to do that? Who's going to say no?
Right.
Who's going to say no to that?
That speaks their language.
In Canada, that's what I did. Tomorrow, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to California to the Expo West conference. Nothing but CPG brands down there. And the guys in Canada said, we're scared to stop using glyphosate, but if you can find us a contract, Josh, we'll eliminate synthetic poison off 100,000 acres in Saskatchewan. There was
Nice.
5 guys in the room. They represented 100,000 acres. So right there, if I can find a little flax contract, or I can find a little durum contract, or a little wheat contract, or a pea contract, it's going to be cheap for the CPG brand because they don't have to go through 17 brokers to get it. It's coming right from the farmer. It's authentic. It's real good stuff, right? And they're eliminating synthetic poison. It's that simple. You go ahead and allow me to have a contract for whatever you want. I promise I won't sleep until that thing is filled. That's how you do it. And then
Yep.
then I hire a guy, and then I hire another guy, and they go out and do the same thing. That's how we fix it. Now, the reason that, like, I'm not God's gift to anything. Like LSM, it's a cool brand. Like, we got a cool thing going. The reason I'm a little bit protective of it is because it's so easy for this kind of management to be bastardized. Meaning, okay, let's spray some minerals and biology, but we'll hit it with a little burn down herbicide before we plant, or, let's just, what if the broadleaf start coming? We'll just hit it with a little broadleaf, we'll just do that. That's really easy to do because those things are profitable to sell.
Yeah.
And so I refuse, hell or high water, I refuse. Living Soil Management in our charter says we will never use synthetic poison ever. And so if you're a company, or if you're a client of ours, and you say, we're all excited about Living Soil Management instead of Dead Soil Management, and we start treating your ground, and then you say, hey, by the way, I just threw a little 2,4-D down, whatever, we had some broadleaves, we did what we had to do. Okay, we're gone. We fire you. We can't be a part of that. It's no longer regenerative. It no longer fits our system. And you've just negated all the work that we just did. And your results are going to be worse than they were if we never showed up in the first place. The minerals,
then you get the blame.
Yep. And the minerals that we put down right here, you spray that herbicide here, at this stage, all those minerals are locked up electrically. Don't work at all. The crops look terrible. Okay. So it's a system, it's not a product. So you gotta say, okay, I have my happy, the happy feeling because I got this contract. I'll just let these guys do their thing. We do our thing every single time. The results are what you see behind me. If you take the shackles off and let us do what we need to do. It's hard for farmers to do that.
Oh yeah. I can appreciate that for sure. Being independent and growing up that this is the only way it can be done. Well, let's kind of bring this thing full circle here, and then we'll wrap up. And I think we need to carry this conversation on again because there's a lot of things that we could talk about. So Josh, if you're willing, we'll have you back another time. But William, love to get your thoughts, and then Josh, I have a couple really brief follow-up questions for you, and then we'll wrap up. So William, what do you think? Does this work?
Yeah, for sure. No question. We know it works. And it's just so awesome that Josh is out there proving it on a large scale. The science is sound. I could name 20 names of scientists, but I'm not going to. There's no point, who have already proven the science. And then I've been doing it on a small scale with the gardeners, people that I've worked with. And Josh has now proven the same thing with the bigger ag in the crops, and it's good. Jay Brown's of the world have proved it with the grazing of cattle, and it's all coming together. And the consumer, like Josh said, is becoming very educated, and they want the nutritious food. The market is there for people who will jump in with both feet, commit 120%, and actually do it. So yeah, it absolutely works. It's not even a question of whether it works. In fact, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm frustrated on these podcasts, not yours so much, Jared, but what we keep doing is we're spending half or more of the time that we're doing these podcasts trying to talk people into it. And they do need to be talked into it, but I'm at the point where I've seen this for so long that I wish we were talking more about what to do.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you, William.
That's what they said. Yeah, when I was getting driven to the airport in Canada, he says, well, everything that we've talked about resonates with me. The only thing I'm trusting you on, Josh, is that it works. And I was like, I wouldn't have been doing this for the last 18 years or whatever it's been if it didn't work. I wouldn't waste my time, but that's everybody's, they're all scared, like just panic that nothing's going to work. I said, well, what you're doing is not working right now, is it? And he said, no. I says, well, what are you doing? Yeah, you sound like a battered wife not wanting to leave her husband. Like, just get away, lady. You know what I mean? That's how it feels like sometimes, these poor guys.
That's good. So Josh, who's who is your ideal client, and what are the steps to engage with you to be able to say, hey, let's do some living soil management on the acres that I have?
Yeah, so, we have a website, livingsoilmgmt.com. Yeah, let's just do that. And that's the best way to get a hold of us and kind of just see a little top line of what we do. We're also needing investment into our company. We own semis, we own sprayers, we own brewers. We have to get inventory in of different prebiotics, probiotics, the right kind of minerals. We're not a product company, but we have to get ingredients and minerals so that we can home cook meals on every field that we treat, right? We got to have the base minerals that are non-offensive to nature, that Mother Nature understands, that works well with biology, right? That's hard to find in the marketplace. So we have to combine those things. That takes a lot of capital. We're going to be treating a large portion of America's agriculture, Lord willing. For that, I need good people willing to push this kind of management forward. I needed financial partners willing to put their money where their mouth is. I need to be able to expand our footprint and open warehouses in different parts of the country and go treat farms wherever they may be. Okay, that's what we need. If you're a producer and you would like living soil management, gather up 5 or 6 farms around you and let's have a discussion. Let's see if this is possible. I'm going to go gather up as many contracts as I can for you guys. And that way we can come and say, hey, living soil management has an offer, not an ask. I'm just trying to figure out how to get less chemicals on the earth as possible. And this is the best way that I've figured out how to do it. And so come join our team, come be a member of our system. I need to replicate myself 7 or 8 more times. Come learn what I do, learn what I know, learn the systems and processes. If you believe in it, then become a member and let's go. But yeah, this is actually a very, very hard but simple problem. And so this is how you can connect. This is how you can become a part of it.
Perfect. Yep, great. Well, we appreciate that, Josh. Thank you, and God bless you in the work that you're doing. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that it is a godly work, that it is something that he wants done. He wants to see more acres treated with respect, and not in the sense that we just lock it up and leave it alone. That is not stewardship, right? And that is not going to feed our country and the world. It takes intensive management, and I think your system is absolutely the way to be able to farm at scale. So go check out. We'll put the link to Josh's website in the show notes here, and if you have further questions, you can reach out to us at Ag Steward if you need connections there to Josh and to his team. But check out that. Josh, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate you. Appreciate the work that you're doing.
You're welcome. You're welcome, guys. And there's a lot of ways to make a living, but this is the way that we choose to make our life. And we feel like we've been entrusted with some pretty special understanding, and we just want to spread that all over, try to get as many of these synthetic poisons out of the environment as possible while still seeing guys be successful. So that's what we're hoping, guys. We really need a change, and we really need it to happen fast.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Josh, William, thank you. We'll catch
Thank
you.
you, guys. Appreciate you for putting
catch
this
you
on.
guys.
Thanks for inviting me.
You bet.
Thank you so much.